Good evening, everyone. Let me just shut my phone up so that doesn't disturb us. And let's just then find myself on Facebook on the phone so that I can share that. Excellent. There we are. And then I'll start to think about picking up the project that we've got today, which is tucked on the floor, because that's always good, isn't it, to tuck it on the floor. Right, let's just do a little bit of a packet opening. Let's just pop that over there whilst we wait for a few people to come on and confirm that they can see and hear me without any great problems. Let's just pop that into camera. Excellent. There we are. Cool. So I can see that we've got people, according to the Book of Face, telling me we've got 7 eyes watching, but no one has commented, so there might be a huge delay. There certainly is. Hello, Emma Z. Thank you, my darling. Welcome for joining us. Let's get rid of those canvas spaces onto the floor. Excellent, excellent. Aha. There we go. All is good in the world. Well, I think all is good in the world. I hope everything is good for everyone else. Okay, so some eyes have fallen off. So let's just wait a little bit and see who joins us for the evening. It's a beautiful day in the UK. The sun is shining, which is lovely. And the temperature has cooled down a little bit, which is even better. Hi, Isabella. Welcome, my darling. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Right. So I had a little bit of a think about what I wanted to do for the live this evening. As you know, a live a week is quite a tall order, really. But hey ho, coming up with things that are new each time. But we do our best, because why not? And I remembered I had Dewdrops collection from Stamperia sitting on the side, and I hadn't really used it very much. And I thought, leaves and florals and birds and birdhouses. And that's where the whole concept for this project then evolved. So that's what we're going to do. And then I thought, what haven't we been using for a while? And then I thought, I haven't done any fibre paste a while. And that means that I think that very few of you will have seen it, although I know Aniko from Hungary does faux birch effect with it, that I haven't seen it used for other things. So I had a little bit of a play, and we've come up with that. Anyway, that was just the play, and I've no idea what I'm going to do with that piece, but we're going to start again completely. And I've just got a rice paper for a background for here, because why not? Why not? Why not? And I am going to add some decoupage varnish and glue to this to adhere it to the background, then protect it with a top layer, and then we're going to have a play with the fibre paste. And it's going to be very much a gentle introduction to fibre paste, because I have a feeling that many of you really won't have seen it being used very much. And sometimes it's good to go back to basics. There we are. So let's just pop this onto here. I could have done a stenciled or a painted background, but I really want the focus of this live to be the fibre paste, and rather than anything other than that. But we have got some embellishments to add to it. And why do I like fibre paste? I like fibre paste because it has structure, and it can be coloured with pigment paste while it's wet, or you can use liquid watercolours to colour it once it's dry, and it remains absorbent. So the liquid watercolours, it sort of seeps in and the colour mutes as you use it, or it can just be plain painted. So lots and lots of options. So we're going to go with plain. We'll have to heat dry it because I'm intending using the new wall art paints for the colouring, because I just think that they're there and they're paint, so they should work. There we are. So that's a goodly layer of that on there. And let's just line this up on the bottom of there so it's reasonably even. Let's just pop that out. Not bad, not bad. There we are. Well, she says with a big air bubble in it. So from that. So let's just ease that down. Yes, lots of big air bubbles. So let's just pop that down from there. Gently, 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 gently. Let's just knock out the air bubbles as we go, so we've got a nice surface. There we are. So hopefully bubble free, or reasonably bubble free. And let's just add a layer of varnish over the top. So I've got a canvas that's approximately A4 in size, so just the perfect size for an A4 rice paper. And we're just going to give this a varnish because I want to add wet mediums on the top, but I want to be able to manipulate them and lift them off if I'm not happy. And so the varnish will allow me to do that once it's properly dry. So that's the plan anyway. There we are. Let's just make sure that that's properly down on place. The canvas is a bit bouncy, but that's okay. We can cope with that, and it will ink the edges post live, so that's okay to deal with that bit of it. There we are. Let's just tuck that down. And so this isn't a Pentacolor canvas, it's a cheaper one from the UK, but that's okay. It will serve its purpose. And I could have put the canvas stretchers in, but I haven't. So, hey ho, to tighten things up. But it won't matter, because I have checked that I can use the sculpture paste on it without too big a problem, which is why that sample was done in the first place. So good evening, Sheila. Hello, Juliana. Good evening, Isabel. So there we are. It's going to be a quiet evening tonight from the looks of things, but that's okay. I think there's a few lives going on elsewhere. There always are, I think. There we are. Let's just make sure that side is properly adhered. And I do, as I say, want a good layer of varnish on the top of this to help seal it in place and protect that rice paper so that I can add layers of mediums over the top and wipe it back. There we are. Let's just knock, I've got air bubbles there, so let's just knock them, push them out, push them all the way out. And I've got lots of the varnish on here, so that is going to make it easier for me to push the air bubbles through. Lots of them. There we are. That looks reasonably good now. Cool. Good evening, Laurie. Hello, Barbara. Welcome. It's a while since I've seen you online. I trust that you are well. Good evening, Josephine. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So let's just give this a wee bit of a blast dry, and then I'll lift up my pot of fibre paste. And we'll have a little mini introduction to it, because am I an expert at it? No, but I have been playing with it for a few years now, so that's also cool, isn't it? I know that some creators use the fibre paste for snow because it's white and textured but not gritty or sparkly.
And I use that on the basis that snow isn't gritty, nor is it sparkly. And it definitely works for them. But the fibre paste was, I think, more for texture than for using as snow paste. Because Pentacolor do have their own snow paste, which I'm actually a huge fan of for snowy projects. But we're not making a snowy project. We're doing something that I think is relevant to spring. Now, I am fully aware that this rice paper has text in the background, and it's running this way. My OCD brain's not a great fan of that, but I'm wanting to create a landscape piece, so I will ultimately end up with it being disguised, I think, by the other pieces that I'm going to pop onto it, and hopefully then it won't irritate my OCD mind, but you never know. You never know. So I'll just let everyone is wow. What else have I got to say today? Well, it's for those of you that are in Hungary, or for those of you that access their supplies via Pentacolor's catalogue, the new Samperia Novelties Timeless collection has arrived in stock, so that's available for ordering. And no doubt that will mean that's what I'm playing with next week, because mine is sitting on the side. It's very pretty, very elegant, meant to be predominantly wedding, but actually I think it will work for lots of different things. This needs to be properly dry, not tacky in any way, shape or form, at least across here, while we start out into the stages. So the bottom half can dry a bit more slowly, but that's also fine. And it might take me a little while with the sculpture pasting, but that's also fine. So I like the face, and I like occasionally having plain doing something that's just that little bit different, still feeling tacky to my fingers at the moment, which is why I'm taking just that bit of time to get this properly dried. There we are. When I joined the Pentacolor creative team a good few years ago now, I was asked very specifically to, if I was going to use papers, then I needed to make sure that they were ones from Samperia. So that's why my lives will have lots of Samperia products in them in terms of papers and things, but obviously I always then use the Pentacolor mediums. But that's cool. Just because I'm using Samperia, actually these techniques could be done with any brand of rice papers or whatever, or stencils. You know, it's more about how to use the product and producing a piece that is quite nice. Still a bit tacky. Because I want to pop a stencil onto here, I need it to be dry before I do that, otherwise the stencil's going to stick and we'll have a bit of a pickle, which won't help, and a destroyed rice paper. And I could have gone so far as to creating a plastered wall for this effect, or I could have think about adding some crackle over the top of it, but actually I just wanted a neutral background that maybe resembled an old wall that had a little bit of greenery on it, leafage rather than greenery, to build the piece from. And it could just as easily be on a wooden board as it is on a canvas, and arguably a wooden board would make your life a bit easier. So let's see if that, reckon that is probably, some of it is dry enough. So I have a stencil. So this is a beautiful stencil, but I don't want the birds and I don't want this part of it, and that's fine. So we're just going to pop that just a little way down. There we are. I'm going to pop it, I think, about there, and it can go off to the side. And let me now
pick up my fibre paste off the floor, and we're going to use the stencil as a guide. And then we'll colour it once it's dry. So this is the fibre paste, and you can see from here, it's a really thick paste, and it has, as it suggests, fibres in it. When it's broken up like that, you can see that it's all fibrous, but actually it won't be so bad when it's in place. Right, let me just click that bird piece out of the way. There we are. Sorry about the plane. So this is just going to help provide me with a structure and a base to work from. Okay. Good evening, Anna. Welcome. Hello, Elizabeth. Welcome. There we are. Let's just pop this into here. Fill up all of those spaces nicely. I don't want that other bird. And I don't want the other part of this stencil. And of course, because this is a stencil, if I'd wanted my branch to fit the other way, then I could just as easily have popped it on the other way around. So I've gone into that bird, which was my bad, but that's okay. So have I managed to catch all of that? And I've come off there, but that's okay. So that's hopefully, there we are. So let's just lift that up out of the way, and then I'm going to pop that, and I'm just going to have a little wipe of the extra that I've got where I don't want it. And because I have taken the trouble to varnish the rice paper and seal it nicely, I can wipe off the extra that I don't want. There we are. Okay, so let's just pop that for the time being down onto the floor, and let me give this a little wipe. Let's take off the worst of that so we're not wasting product unnecessarily. There we are. The fibre paste, certainly in my conservatory, it's quite warm, will dry quite quickly today. There we are. So let's just give this, it's already drying on this stencil. So when you're cleaning your stencils, have it on a firm surface, and make sure that you're not catching fine areas and lifting them up, because that will not help you long term. Make sure that anything you squish through is gone from the back. And there we are. So that is one cleaned stencil. So that can tuck over there. So fibre paste. How am I going to use it? Well, I'm going to use it in its raw form, but as I say, you can colour it with pigments if you want to, and to build really beautiful flowers. And you can colour it afterwards with liquid watercolours, or you can simply paint it with with acrylic, with any of your paints. So let's just take a big glob of that out of here, pop it there on my things. You need a slippy surface for this technique, so I've got a glass mat that works really well. If you haven't got a glass mat, you've got a self-healing cutting mat, then I would suggest that you just laminate a piece of A4 card, and that will work for you. So there we are, and it does help to try and keep things clean. I know that's me that's saying that, so that's not going to happen, is it? Of course it's not going to happen. Anyway, so I'm just going to smooth this out a little bit. I don't need a thick there. Okay. But I don't want to waste it either. So that can go in there, and we'll be moving stuff around. And then you need a selection of palette knives, because you will get a slightly different effect depending on which palette knife you want to use. Good evening to our lovely friend from Greece who has joined us. Good evening, Gloria from Canada. So I've got a collection of different palette knives here of different sizes and shapes, and that's important because you'll get slightly different effects. And we're just going to make leaves today, and there's a couple of ways of making leaves. So good evening, Boulder, welcome, my darling. And I'm going to show you a couple of ways of doing it. So I've got my palette knife. That's not my favorite one for this technique, so let me just find the one I prefer to use, because we all have things that we like. And so I'm going to take my palette knife and I'm going to have it at an angle. It's approximately 45 degrees, and I'm just literally going to scrape off along the back of here, okay, until I've got a reasonable wodge on there and it's folded up. Yeah, so that's what it looks like. And this is the simplest form of the leaf. So I'm going to take off most of it off that side and that side, and it looks almost like an upside down a triangle when it's like that. And all you need to do is that, and you'll get something that's leaf shaped. Okay, but that's not the leaf we're going to use, but it's a good starting place for learning how to do these pieces. Okay, so we're gonna, but that is the simplest, and just have a few plays with it to start with. We're going to do a slightly different form of this, and and I will run out of room undoubtedly as I've put that there, but that's okay. So the style of leaf I want to make is different to that, so I'm literally just going to pick up this way. And you can angle it so you've got more paste coming off one direction. So here it's coming off there. And then I'm going to swipe. So I've got my things down and like that. And I've got a splodge. And then I'm going to cut off that bit that I don't want. And I'm going to pop that back on the pool, on that pile. I want a partner, but I want it going the opposite way. So I'm going to go to the other side and literally pick up some pieces there. And then I'm going to swing the opposite way and cut off the extra. Now, if you have a longer palette knife, you will get a longer piece. And then I'm going to scoop these two up. You can do it one of two ways. So I'm going to scoop up this way, bring this along here and scoop up that way. And I now have a leaf piece on here that I can touch quite happily. And I'm going to clean this. And then I can add in some pieces. I think I'm going to, I added my extra things once it was actually on my make. So we've got a little leaf shape, which I can curve. And now I need to get it off here. So I'm just going to pick up that canvas that we've got here. Okay. And I'm going to position this where I want it. So I'm going to stick it on the end of that and pick up a clean palette knife and use this to slide it off. Yeah. And at the same time, I can pin it down and link it in to the end of there. So I now have a leaf attached here, and I can pull it down at that end and just straighten it out. It does need to be attached. I'll show you. If you don't go to the trouble of attaching it, then it will cause you problems later. But you can then, if it dries and comes off, you can then add some gel medium. And let's just add some little lines into here. So some texture, and don't be afraid to fiddle with it. Okay. We're going to be doing that quite a lot. So let me just pop that over there out of the way, and let's come back to my favourite palette knife. Okay. Because we've got lots of this to do. So we're just going to pick off pieces like that, squish it like that, take off the extra, pop that back, and don't be tempted to put out masses and masses of product because it will dry out, and then we can go out here. It's better to put little bits out and come back to it, otherwise you'll find that you're being wasteful. Okay, so that's going that way. Then I can slice off the extra. That can go into there. I can pick this up, put that up and pick it up. Pop it together. Come back to my canvas, and we're going to have a clean palette knife, and I'm going to pop this down onto there, pin it down. Okay, and just put some lines into here. I'm just using my palette knife, but you could use whatever you wanted. There we are. Okay, so I'm afraid we now have rinse and repeat. Hi Helen, welcome my darling. I'm glad you like it. It's different, isn't it? But as I say, I don't think people, I think people have, it's a product that might have been forgotten about, or people might just not be used to using. So that way, take off the excess. I'm not going to lie, it takes a bit of practice. Okay, you can see where it's drying up over there already. And for the opposite side, you need to go the opposite way. Take off what you don't want, pop it back in the pile, pick it up. I'm closing the leaf because that's what I want to do. I'm going to pop it, turning my piece around. I want to have another leaf here, so I'm going to pin it down and slide away. Yeah, there we are. And that way I've also managed to get rid of the gap in the stencil, and then I can just add some texture into here, smooth it off. Okay, so I'm sorry, but we just have to bear with whilst we do this. But there's quite a lot to be said for repetitive processes to learn different techniques. Hello, Michelle. Welcome. Bonsoir, Paris, or bonsoir, France. I don't know whereabouts you are in France. There we are. So, as I say, the more you do, the more often you do it, the easier it becomes. And I've been playing with this intermittently over 2 or 3 years. I have had some proper sculpture painting tutorial. See, I've made a mess of that one, and that's fine because that didn't work. So I'm just going to spread that out. Where's that bigger spatula? There we are. We're going to take that out, spread it out. We don't like waste, but it's definitely easier with a thinner layer on there. And keeping your spatulas reasonably clean also helps matters. So I'm just waiting for it just to poke over like that. There we are. Take that off, pop that into there. Reasonably clean. pick up, put it up, pick it up, close it down, and then let's just pop that one onto there. So I'm just going to anchor it. And then move that. There we are. So that can go onto there. And you can reshape as you want to. Let's give that a little bit of a clean. Hi Alison, good afternoon, good evening even. And I can tell that this is thickening already because it feels different when I'm doing that shaping. So there we are. I do want a branch full of leaves, surprisingly. There we are. But it won't take a silly, an undue amount of time. It is going to take a little bit of time though. Okay, so let's just chop off the worst of that. See this great big splodge here? I don't want it there. I'm just going to clean it out of the way. Okay, I'm going to pick that up. Pick that up. Close my leaf. You don't need to close the leaf if you don't want to, but I think it's quite helpful to do so. And I've got a join here where the step from the stencil that I don't particularly like, so I'm just going to pop that, squish that into there. I'm going to hold as I pull. Okay, and now I can put that into there, draw my line back in, draw these into place, just adding the texture so I can see that that's lifting. There we are. So it's just going to add lots of detail, lots of texture. We don't need to add as many of these as I did on the original piece. So that is going to be quite big, okay, because I've taken a bigger amount. And I'm using my smallest, one of my smaller spatulas, because I don't want huge pieces. But if I wanted big flowers, then obviously I could do that. So I'm going to come back to this. And I've definitely have favourite spatulas nowadays for doing this with. There is no question. I have ones that I like and ones that I don't. So let's just pop that onto there. I can add some more of these after the live. So let's just squash that into there, hold that and slide this, pop that down. Okay. Now that is not going to be anchored very well, but that's fine. So let's just pop that into there. Okay, I can squash underneath of that. There we are. So we're going to have a slightly different shaped flower, but that leaf, that's okay, because leaves come in all sorts of shapes and sizes. I'm just going to re-emphasize that line in the middle. Okay. So I'm sorry if this is, it's one of those things that where when I first saw it, I didn't really get, and I took myself off, but there's almost no one in the UK who does this type of work, and certainly not who does classes. So I've largely had to learn for myself. Okay. So those two weren't quite the same size. So I'm just going to sort that out, turn this round. So just make use of what you've got. I'm going to anchor and then I'm going to hold and slide. Yeah, and I felt that lift, so I'm just going to re-anchor it into there. Okay, and add in the lines into here. And you can support your work, that's not a problem, whilst you're drawing your lines and adding your texture. That's also fine. Okay, we've got a few more of these to go. Maybe I should have thought about this, but as I say, there's a limit to how many prep pieces you want to make. And this is definitely getting thick. Yeah, I can feel that this is thickening up, and I'm just going to give it, can you hear that it's already drying? So let me just give this a clean, because it gets harder to shape when you've got big globs of the paste, and then we'll obviously need some more out. And the fibre paste comes in 150ml pots and also 500ml pots, and hopefully Helen Louise from Dragonstorm, aka Interiors, so perhaps she could the UK companies that she's distributing to have it in stock or not. So let's just pop out another splodge of that. Thank you, and it won't stay this colour. As I say, for those of you that missed this when I started this, you can pre-colour this with pigment paste, because that won't alter the texture, so you can have this in any colour that you want. It remains porous when it's dry, so you can use liquid watercolours to colour it when it's dry, and the colours wick and mute down, and it's a very pretty effect. There we are. Let's just pop that over there, out of harm's way. It's going to give me enough room to work. Okay, and we'll stick that in the middle, and then we're going to clean that favourite tool down, and this one. It definitely makes a big difference if you can keep your tools reasonably clean. Do they have to be fully clean? Well, no, but it does make life easier. So we're just going to pick that up, and it isn't, I am literally just scraping little bits so it bunches up, pops over the side, and then I'm putting my wrist down and flicking to smooth it out. On top of what I don't want, that horrible tail, popping it on there, and then I'm going to go to the other side, because I want them facing in each different directions, and that's going to work. Okay, so it's just a question of play and practice, but it's not, once you've mastered it, it's really not so difficult. There we are, and I've got a little tail here, so I can tighten this. Don't be afraid to manipulate them. There we are, that's fine. Okay, so let's just take that, anchor it down, then I'm going to hold the plaster as I move the other off out of the way. Okay, and it's that hold movement that makes a difference, and then we're going to just add a little bit of plaster into there to make a twig. Okay, and if I want this to be slightly angled, I can do so. I can then just draw my line back in, just add my veins into the piece. You can add as much or as little as you want. It's not maybe the best flower but leaf, but as I say, leaves are different shapes, and I'm going to reshape it. Okay, And I'm going to give it a little twist. So just learn not to be afraid of it. Yeah. Give that a clean. I picked up a lump there that I didn't like, which is why I've pulled that one away. Yeah, so we can just speed up a little bit. As I say, when you're used to it, you just get a little, you get into the rhythm, and it just becomes easy. Does it take you a little while to get there? Yeah, it does. I will not lie. Let's just add a little bit into there, link it up. Okay. And I definitely would say that when you're starting out, just do a smaller one. I've picked quite a lot of leaves on this, but that's because I'm using the stencil as the guide for my leaves on my branch, yeah? So we just need to carry on. Well, we're not doing so badly for time. Some things just take their time, don't they? There we are. So I trust that everyone is well. You can almost become meditative when you're doing this. There we are. I've got another leaf there that I definitely want to get rid of the gubbins on there. I'm going to anchor you down. Get rid of that. Hold, slide, place. Okay. And change the shape. And that's also fine. Yeah. Oh, she says, I've got a whole mountain of paste on the bottom of there. But it's going to add texture. It's called sculpture painting. And the real experts, and I'm not a real expert, can make beautiful flowers. All sorts of flowers. Stunning birds. But I think it just takes a little bit of time. So I'm hoping that just by doing leaves rather than doing anything complicated, see, I don't like that. I don't like the shape of that. Will show to people that you don't need to have, doesn't need to be complicated. And baby steps, yeah. I've deliberately not chosen a uber complicated project tonight. These are just leaves. But they are the fundamentals for most things. So let's just take that end off there. Take that end off there. Get rid of the waste. Scoop, scoop, close. So we've got a leaf. Have that clean. So I'm going to anchor that there. So I'm going to knock it down. And I'm going to hold and slide. Yeah. And it's that hold and slide. That's probably the most difficult bit, Boda, is actually that technique, is that hold and slide. Oops. Let's get rid of that lump. There we are. And I can see gaps where I don't want them. Okay, so I'm just going to add some little bits into here, onto that stencil, and just smooth it out into the pieces. Just little bits. And then I can link these so that the stems are not separated from each other and they don't have that gap. And then I can just thin it down, thin it in, and I'm building some depth and some dimension into that piece. There we are. But the key is definitely not to be afraid of it. So we'll get rid of that bit. And now we've got another we've got a bit here to link in. I'm going to pop that into there. And I've got quite a lot there, but that's okay. We'll just take this up bit by bit by bit onto that leaf. Spread it down. I'm going to take a little bit of that and pop it up into there, because I can see, again, I've got a leaf that is not quite attached because of where the stenciling is. And it's just making those trunks, you know, look more attached and related. So see here, there's a big gap here, and just let me sort out a couple more leaves, and then we'll tackle that area in a minute. Okay. There we are. I never thought I'd be able to do this a few years ago. I have to say, I admired the work of, I think it's a Russian lady, possibly. But I never thought that I would be able to achieve it. So let's just pop it here. So anchor it, stabilize, and pull away. And that's not going to work for me on that move. So let's just not worry about that. And let's just pick up another one. And if it's not clean, that's when things get, you know, when it tends to end up messy, which is why it's helpful to keep things tidy. There we are. Okay. So let's just anchor that. Where's that nice? Oh, hold that in place. Slide that off. Tuck it down. Anchor it in to there. I'm going to add just a little bit more into there. Now I have to say that I would, off live, I would definitely be adding, you know, add more of these into this. On live, we'll do the essential ones only. Okay, so that's going to go into there. Let's just pull that in and down, and then I can keep all of these. I want a little bit of a twist, so I'm just going to pop that up, knock that down. So I've not got it completely flat. If we look here, it's no longer completely flat. So that's the joy of this, and that will hold. And if it starts to flop before it's dry, I can always come back in and redo it, reposition it. It smells like my daughter is cooking tea. That'd be lovely. You can see all of this mess on the back. That's when things start to become more difficult. There we are. Let's just pop that onto there. Let's just add this into here. So I'm going to anchor. Have I got a clean? Well, I've got a cleaner piece there. Okay. I'm going to hold. That hasn't anchored. My bad. So let's just anchor it. Okay. So it's still not anchored. Okay. Does it matter that it's up in the air? Yeah, because if I don't get it anchored, it won't stay on the piece. Okay, so let's just do that into there. Let's give this a clean. We're having orzo with red pepper pesto. Yeah. Okay. So let's tackle. Oh, I would almost certainly add a whole mountain more of these, ladies. I'm not going to hide from the fact that I would. Okay, but I've got. So I've changed my palette knife to a long thin one. Okay, because I want to just build some texture, and this is long and thin, so that's going to help, isn't it? Yeah, this is the palette knife you use if you're going to be doing bird feathers. Not mastered that one, so I'm not going to go volunteer to go teaching that. Okay, so we're just going to thicken up and give some texture to that bark. Pop that into there. Because the bark wouldn't have holes, would it? You know, let's face it, it just wouldn't. That's definitely thickening again. I can feel that it is. Okay. So let's just pull that. Just spend a little bit of time just adding the shape in, thinning it down into the shape that you want it to be. You take control of it, and it's not so difficult. Okay, so we're just going to add, and if you want finer ones or you want more marks in it, you carry on and add them in. There we are. So, nearly there, ladies, with this bit. Nearly there. So let's just smooth this out because it's getting a bit thick in that pile where I've been peeling off and dumping. Let's clean these down. Sorry. There we are. If your hands get tired, just pop your paste back in the pot, walk away. Can't do that on a live, obviously I can't, but walk away from it and come back. It doesn't have to be the same, does it? Oops, she says, push shuffling stuff there. So let's just pop that one here, anchor it down. Hold and slide. See, my hands are getting tired, and I know they are. There we are. Let's just turn that so that leaf is curled under on itself. Yeah. Let's just give this a clean. Hello, Blanche. Welcome. Welcome, welcome. So let's just... Okay. And we've got another open area linking into there. I don't like. Because I've varnished that, I can now close that in. And I can carry on and add as many. So that is a hard piece, and that will make a mess. So let's just do that. Swap. Clean. I don't like the way that's going. Definitely need a clean down. But I might add some of these off the live because I can show you the techniques and add into this later on. Okay. Come on. There we are. Because talking to it really helps, doesn't it? Of course it does. Of course it does, ladies. Talking always helps. There we are. There we are. Right, let's just get rid of that lot. I'm definitely going to, you can tell when you've got too much rubbish on your desk and too much of a pile of stuff that's not working for you, because you start running out of room. There we are. Let's get rid of that blob that's up there. We've now got a very, very high leaf there, but that's fine. Okay, and then I'm just going to add the texture into that leaf. Pop it in while it's wet. Swash that down. Okay. In fact, I'm not, because I can already feel that is feeling awful, and it's a feel. So let's just clean some of that. See, I'm actually having to chip that off because it's dried out. Okay, and that's fine, but it doesn't help you when you're trying to shape your pieces. So get rid of it. You can keep that as texture. It's quite nice texture in its own right, but it's not great for flower shaping. There we are. Let's just make a mess of your hands, woman. Why not? Why not? Why not? Why not? There we are. Let's just pop that out. Pop that in there. Now I am going to give that a spray of water. I'm not going to need much more and I know that I'm in my conservatory, and if I don't give that a little spritz of water, it's a water-based product, then actually when I come back to that in a year's time, because it might not be, it might be a year before I actually come back to use it, then actually it will have dried out, and that's not what I want. So let's just have a clean of that and a clean of that, and we can pop this out again. You don't really, you only want this 2 or 3 millimeters thick. You don't need a really thick layer, okay, of that. So let's just, yeah, see, that's feeling better, and it's lifting more nicely because I'm not coping with, you know, shards of stuff that are dried out. No, we didn't have any thunderstorms yesterday, Sarah. So it's just picking up so much more nicely, having taken the time to clear that down. Okay. So let's just pop that round onto there. I'm going to add that piece into there. And this is about, you know, creating, taking time, zoning out, just doing what feels right for you, adding as many or as little as you want. Jenny, it's fibre paste, my darling, okay? Okay. So it has got a texture to it, and almost fibrous. Okay. I'll pop that into there. Let's give that a little bit of a clean. It is fun. I want that leaf to stay at an angle. So I'm just going to support it while I put that shape in to there. There we are. Okay, so I would almost certainly carry on and add some more leaves into here. So I would add another one onto there, another one into here, definitely some more up here. Okay, I'm not going to do that off the live because otherwise we will be here for the cow till the cows come home. So I've just taken some of that thicker paste that I've got left out, and I'm just going to take it down the side of my canvas, turn that round, pop it back into camera, and then we're going to just add this, come up into here and add some, just, you know, get rid of some of those linking areas. So I can just smooth that out, smooth it out, and I've got a gap here that I definitely don't like. So I'm going to pop some of that paste into here. Just pop it down and sculpt it into place so that the twigs look as if they're actually attached. Yeah, so I would absolutely carry on and add more and more flowers, you know, leaves to that without any question. Okay, so that water that I spritzed in there is already absorbed, which tells me that that was absolutely drying out. So let's just pop the bulk of that back into there. let's lid it. Thank you, Sarah. I'm going to have a clean down, and then we're going to get to the birds. Right, because we haven't even got to that bit, have we? No, we haven't. So this is just a simple, yes, it's a labour of love, but what's that taken us? It's taken us an hour. Okay, and I'm going to pop that down on the floor to dry, and then I'm going to clean my revoltingly mucky hands, and I have already done some prep. Here we are, because I didn't think you necessarily wanted to be here all evening. So let me just give these a wee bit of a clean. Good evening, Stephanie. Thank you for joining us. Let's tidy it, straighten that up. Let's get rid of the waste, get rid of that. Have I managed to get my hands clean? Answer no. If you don't like mucky hands, put some gloves on. Oh, sorry, Sarah. I know you don't like thunderstorms at all, do you? And then we're going to have some painting of mould. So these come from the collection Dewdrops, but there's several house moulds, including soft ones that can go in there. So, choose the ones that work for you. There we are. And I've taken my coloured choice from the original paper collection. So we're not thinking traditional, because why should we? So I've picked up the wall decor paints, and this one is Vibrant Red. It's called Vibrant Red. To me, it's definitely not red, although I have to be fair and say on screen it definitely looks red. Let's just take some of that. We're not going to need masses. This one is Ocean Blue, and it is stunning. So let's just take a little bit of Ocean Blue. Again, we are not going to need much of that. And I'll get the yellow out in a minute. Oh! No, we won't. We'll get it out now. Because why shouldn't we? So this is a Lesueur. So this is a semi-opaque in black. Let's just pop that over there. Any minute, money. Oh, I've got a new green on order, because when I showed you these way back at the beginning, I dropped the pot and broke the lid. So whether this is going to come off is a moot point. No. So that's my, but I have got a new one of those. So, but we do have apple green. So that's okay. We'll take some apple green, a little bit of apple green onto there. And we can change the colour with the black. Oh, absolutely. Wouldn't be me if I didn't have mucky hands, would it? And I did have a brown. There we are. Truffle brown. Let's just have a wee bit of truffle brown. There we are. Okay. So let's just do a bit. And you think, what on earth am I doing? Since when do I do this? But this is an undercoat, and it's not going to stay. Most of this is going to get wiped off. So these have been cast with resin, primed with gesso, and I might need some more of that black, having shoveled so much onto there, but hey ho. Okay, and this will just provide me with an undercoat, and it will make a difference. Okie dokie. So we're going to take off most of that. But really simple.
really simple. Let's do this one with the brown. There we are. Except that, yeah, so, but we're not going to keep them in those colours. We're going to be adding. There we are. So let's just do that and that and that. Give these a chance to vaguely dry a little bit before we do the next bit. There we are. There we are. So let's get rid of a lot of that off there. We're going to be adding colour into this. Okay, so this undercoat is really just a base to add some shading. Right, Mr. Birdie is going to have an undercoat on the wing. And on the leaves. Oh, on the leaves. On the feet. Wait, feet, yeah. So we're just going to add that, wipe most of that off. And I think, yeah, it looks a mess. And that's just fine. Okie dokie. It's not a problem at this stage. Let's just add some brown into here, because it's not going to stay looking a mess, I can assure you. There we are. There's some leaves there, so we won't have that. We might leave that coated as it is. Okay, okay. So this pink is really quite vibrant. Okay, it really is really vibrant, and I didn't particularly want it to be quite so vibrant, so we're going to mute it down onto here. There we are. So we can have the brown on the inside, pop that there, pop that into there. We might have a little bit of a walk back, and then we're going to add some of that blue, again muted with that black. Might need to get some more of the black out. So I've got a blacky blue for that roof rather than a brown or a black. And that undercoat in the colour just makes a big difference to the overall effect. There we are. We're going to need to do that. We're just going to need a little bit more of that black out. So let's just pop a little bit of that over there. Over there. Take some of that blue. Some of that black. So I want a blacky blue. I definitely still want it blue, but I don't want it that vibrant colour. So I'm just muting it with that. Okay. I'm just going to add a little bit of lightness to that now. Pull off some of it off the top, so it's a little bit more aged and less perfect. There we are. We could have gone for a purple roof. So let's just change the colour up of that and go for mix in some of that beautiful red. We might need to get some more of that out as well. This out, it's red, but it's a beautiful colour. Yeah, it is absolutely a beautiful colour. There's no question about it. Okay. So let's just now give this birdhouse its blue colour. So don't be afraid to mix up your pieces, mix up your colours. white back, give it a shabby look, keep your colour. There we are. Okay. Let's just add a little bit more onto there because it's a bit paler than I really want it on that top. There we are. Okay, so that can go over there. I can see that we've missed the undersurface of that, so let's just pop that into there. Right. So I looked at the thank you, Donatella. That's a real compliment. Ladies, if you want to know how to do really nice sculpture painting, Donatella is way better than me. Way better than me at it. But I thought mine would be less scary for people. So that is, as I say, vibrant red. More like magenta. It really is more like magenta. There we are. And when I pop this onto here, I just went, oh, that's a bit bright. It just is a bit too bright. So let's just add this in to here and soften it down with that black. And then let's just have a little bit of a white back to add some shading in. And clean cloth really does make a difference. And then I need to add some blue into that, back into this. So we'll move the blue with that. And then we're going to have a blue top to the bird. Not realistic, not lifelike, but that's also just fine. Let's just add in some extra colour onto that leaf, onto those feathers. And I might add just a bit more black into that. There we are. Okay. And I can see that I've got a bit of a feather there that just needs a little bit of calming down into there. And I'm just going to wipe that back just ever so gently. So I've got the shades into there just by wiping back. And I'm working on resin, so it's a non-absorbent surface. So you just have to get happy with what you've got. That green is too green. It's too vibrant. Okay, let's just knock it back, make it into a more bluey green as opposed to a yellow green. And let's just add that into there. I've got some white flowers and they're going to stay white. I did try adding different colours, but I didn't like it. And I'm going to add some of the contour pen later. So that can go over there. That can go. Let's just pop these somewhere where they can dry. And then I'm going to see how dry this is. And let's just have a tidy up with some of this. I don't need that pink out. So I'm going to get rid of this. I'm just going to have a clean down of the mess. Okay. I will need the blue out. There we are. But actually, there we are. Look at the state of my hands. Right, so let's just let's get rid of that mucky. So Casa Donatella on YouTube, Stephanie. It's in Italian, but there's a lovely lady called Teresa who will interpret if you have questions. She's very lovely. Right, so let's just pick this up. And this might not be. It's not. It's still soft, ladies. I'm not going to lie. Let me just tidy this, and then I'll re-put that out because it's going to be in the way. And I need to pop this flat. It's not dry. Okay, let me just give that a little bit of a blast, and then I will pop out some more of the colours. Let's just give this a wee bit of a. So I will say I would definitely think about adding. So now see, this is partially dry. I can twist this. I can add texture to it. There we are. Let me just give these all a little bit more of a dry.
and then we'll get out those colours again in a minute. So where's that brown? Here's the brown. So let's just take this kind of smallish brush, and then let's just add in. So this is when you just need to just take your time. Gently, gently. And I say you can, there's nothing wrong with colouring your paste with pigment paste first. There's absolutely nothing wrong with doing that. Or just adding some liquid watercolours into this, and it will wick through for itself. Okay. So we now just have to be patient, ladies. Okay, okay. And she's there sticking her tongue out, concentrating. Did I think this through? Let me think. That'll be no then, won't it? Okay, there's a, and you can add. Your own extra details. You want some more twiggy bits? You go adding your own twiggy bits in. Yeah. So bit by bit, and I would definitely be spending quite a lot of time doing this with a fine brush, just picking up all of the details, all of that texture. Taking it from different angles so I can see what I'm doing. At the moment it's not necessarily that I can, because I'm popping it so I can see it for the live. There we are. I also don't want to be here until the cows come home for everyone. Okay. So you can carry on, as I say. If you want to add some extra pieces, then you do so. So the stencil is just a guide to the whole piece. And I'm having to be fairly careful at the moment because this is not fully dry. Okay. And in an ideal world, you would wait for your paste to be completely dry before you paint it. So I can see that that's a real pickle there. Let's just take our time. Let's just add a little bit of water. There we are. The water is going to help it flow into the piece. There we are. Water is sometimes your best friend when you're creating. And as I say, the paste wicks. So it will pull it down into wet mediums, will wick into it, which again will make your life easier. I can feel it's still
it's still quite wet under my hands. There we are. Oops. There we are. So carry on and add what you want. Yeah. You can add more leaves as you want then, can't you? Yeah. Let me just come into here. I can see I've got white paste there. So it just is a question of spending your time. Let's just add some water into here and let it wick through. As I say, you could add way more leaves into here. It's entirely up to you how much you add in or not, as the case may be. Am I a natural artist? Absolutely not. I'm definitely not a natural artist. Yeah. I've learnt through play. So there we are. We'll come back in and we'll tidy up as we go. But I can do that off the live. I've got lots of texture on this now. This piece is very wet at this end where I put the thicker layer into it, and that's absolutely fine. I'm very much aware that it's thicker, and I need to be very careful here while it dries off completely. So those added pieces are just making the world of difference to this tree, and they're bit by bit are bringing it all to life. And just thin that down. Adding some water is definitely helping this the paint wick into. Into here. Here we are. So with that round the corner. So let me pop it back onto the live. There we are. But this would definitely be easier to paint at this stage if you've, once it's completely dried. So that would be my advice if you're using this product, is let it dry before you add it. So we now have our tree branch. Very good. Well, enjoy your phone call, Jenny. It's not a problem. Right, let's just pick that up. Let's do that. Let's pick some of that green and that blue. We are getting there. You'll be delighted to know we are getting there. So let's just have some of that apple green. Of course, it's beautiful. Some of that blue, because that green is too bright. Honestly, it is. And then let's just mix together and get a shade that I'm happy with. I do definitely want it green, but I don't want it though that bright. There we are. There we are. So now again, we're going to, sorry ladies, add in the green. There we are. So we'll mix the colours in the same way as I do on my moulds. Popping that so I can see. I can't do this very easily with on camera. It just needs to be. There we are. Just needs a fine brush, a little bit of time. All of that texture is in there. I can add, so if I wanted to, I could add some of that, the black Lazur into here to pick up the colours. Okay. But you can see that, although this isn't fully dry, it's actually not proving impossible for me to paint this on the live. So I could, oh, sorry, I can't do that bit on camera. I need to have it up and under my nose. It's always a challenge, isn't it? Always a challenge. There we are. That's my daughter saying no to me. She'll just have to, that'll be to tell me that tea's ready because I'm running late. Well, what a surprise. There we are. Pop that under there. So we're going to give these a quick coat and then I will come back off live and add some of them in. But because of some of the embellishments I do need that I'm going to add in, I definitely need to have some bits of these painted. I'll be able to get underneath, I think. There we are. The liquid watercolour is quicker because it literally just wicks into place.
I'm going to need to turn this round to get to the other side of those leaves. So now I can see that I've got, let me come on camera, that's it. So I've got that white line here of unpainted paste. Let's tackle it. And that's the thing, when you've got a dimensional project that you're doing, you just need to be able to pick it up and look at it from lots of different angles, because it really will make a huge difference to what you pick up and what needs coloured and what doesn't need coloured. There we are. And I don't have an issue with some bits of green going down onto the, there we are, that's some brown picking up there because that's still wet, but that's okay. The water is definitely helping this process. Okay. So ladies, it's getting to be quite late. Okay. I know that I will carry on and I'm going to have to paint all of these. So we've got some choices. We can persevere and I can just take the time, or I can tell you what I'm going to do next to finish it off. And then let it dry properly and carry on the painting off camera. Given the hour of the day, what would you like me to do? Because we might just be here a wee while while we do this. Thank you. Thank you, Blanche. It's just a little bit tricky to do this. I knew that we might have some headaches with this in terms of timing. There we are. So bit by bit we'll come round and we will add in and we will cover all of that white paste. You might say if you want to, you can pre-colour and that solves the problem. But I sort of wanted to use the new paints in the process, which is why, to show that just because it's labelled wall decor doesn't mean that that's the only thing that you can do with it. I think it's easy for stuff to get boxed as a name, isn't it, and a product, and us forget that we can actually, a paint is a paint is a paint. There we are. At this rate, we'll have finished it before I finish the live regardless. Hey ho, there we are. So I can see, yeah, the more I turn this, the more I will see that areas that I will have to come back to. Okay, I know that that's going to absolutely be the case, but that's absolutely fine. You know, you just have to be prepared to do that when you're doing the lives. There we are.
There we are. Let's just add in a little bit of brown into that. Okay. So each leaf will always be different because I'm colour mixing as I go. Take that green onto there. That's still very soft, so that's my bad for disturbing that. Yeah. Don't you worry, darling. We'll carry on. What would you like me to do? People are obviously fed up, bored, gone off to do better things, or are entranced with what's going on. And I'm not helping by continuing, and I'm almost there, aren't I? So I can do the finessing quite happily off the live, because it will need some finessing off the live, but that's okay, because I'm never going to get it all painted. Hello, Arkelis. Welcome, my darling. We are almost at the end of this, she says. We've been doing some sculpture painting with some product called fibre paste, and I'm painting with the new wall colours. I've got apple and ocean blue out at the moment. We've created all of these leaves by hand with the fibre paste. You can add your own leaves into there if you want to as well, in the same way as I added in to the piece earlier on. Looks like, oh, I did add some bits onto that. There we are. Oh, that'll be a nice bug flying around from having, because I've got my conservatory doors open at the moment. So I will definitely have to come in and finesse this painting. There's no question about it. But hey ho, there we are. 2 leaves to go. Thank you. As I say, the painting needs to have several hours, well, a bit more time, because it needs to dry, and then I need to come back and get all of the areas that I've missed on the live. But that's okay. We can do that. Oops, she says, having got paint where she doesn't really want it, but there we are. So I can see lots of white areas. So Stephanie, I said, what did people want me to do? Carry on painting? We might be here a little while, or did they want me to, did I want them just to show them how I had, where I was intending putting the birdhouse and things? But then I carried on. No one, and assumed everyone was happy with where we were up to, and carried on, and we're almost at the point where I was going to be adding, apart from the fact I know I'm going to have to come back in and finesse some of the painting of the leaves, particularly on the under areas of the leaves. Yeah. Yeah, and sort of where, as I turn it round, you see, each time I turn it round, I see other areas that I've missed in the process. And that's the problem with stuff that is dimensional, isn't it? That, you move, as you move it around, you've got areas that are become visible that weren't visible when they were flat. And that piece is very, very soft still. There we are. having said that, we're not so bad. There we go. There. Okay. So yes, we do have a little bit of tidying up to do. There is no question about it. There's some tidying up of the brown needed. There's some tidying up and some low lighting and highlighting adding in. But that's going to be a headache while this is all completely wet. So don't stress about it. I'm not going to. The whole purpose was to show you how to make the leaves in the first place. And I think we've done that. See, I'll carry on till the cows come home. Right. Now then. Oh, she says, standing up. So we have 2 little birdhouses. So we're going to pop a birdhouse there. And we're going to pop a birdhouse. See, I obviously, when I did this, didn't have it quite in the same place. But we're going to have a birdhouse there and there. Okay. And we're going to add, she says, some wax. Once you can see where it is, there we are. So we're going to add just a little bit of wax to our birdie. There we are. Some wax onto those. So I'm not going to glue these in now. I'm going to wait until it's properly dry. And then I can add these in. Okay. And then I have some little florals. Right, let us. So that's a bigger floral. I'm just going to add some of the contour pen into here. Okay. Yep. I'm going to pop that one, I think, into there. So I will glue these down post live. Okay. And I have a little set of words. And it says beauty of early morning. And I think we're going to just chop this up. Where's a pair of scissors? So that it's even through. I'm going to pop that one there, I think. Right down there. So that's just beauty of, can go there. And early morning can come to, beauty of early mornings can go into there. And then we might add a few splatters. So off live, when it's properly dried, I will retouch up the leaves. I will add a little bit of wax into them to highlight all of that texture from the texture paste, okay, from that fibre paste. And we will then add it, and then I will glue those into place. But if I try doing it now, it's just going to be impossible for me to come back in and paint long term all those areas and add the wax where I want it. So that's the plan for tonight. So we've used fibre paste, which hasn't been used very often on lives, to make our florals, and we've added our birdhouses from Dewdrops. We've added a couple of little birds into here onto our trees, and
hence the title Birdsong. So I hope that that's been a nice live for you this evening, something different. As I say, I know that I need to do quite a lot more painting to tidy it up, to darken some of the colours, even things up where it's less obviously evened at the moment. Then I can glue things in, and I'm just going to ink around the edges of the canvas so that it's all tied in. So I hope that you've all had a nice evening. Thank you for spending your Tuesday evening with me. Thank you, Sheila. It's been much appreciated. Thank you, Stephanie. I am intending doing a live on Friday, and I will be using Timeless, which has arrived at Pentart, and also Timeless will also be being used on Sunday's live because I've got samples to make. But I might not be doing wedding with it. So on that sneaky little note, we will leave that as it is, and I will look forward to seeing you online soon. Bye.